I'm glad that you're here, and I'm sorry that you're here. Divorce is one of the hardest things that you can go through. How do you move on after a divorce? That's what we're talking about today at Live on Purpose TV. Probably one of the most stressful things that a human being can go through is divorce. In fact, on many of the lists that I've seen, it comes in higher on the stress list than the death of a spouse. Now, those of you who have gone through this, you can probably understand that because there are issues that come up and there are injuries that occur. And it's just this crazy, awful experience that a lot of people go through, unfortunately. I think the first thing that's important to understand is that you are never wrong about how you feel. You are never wrong about how you feel. How you feel is 100% consistent with the way your mind is processing this experience. And how are you supposed to feel when something like this happens, right? It's really a normal reaction to an abnormal event in your life. Can you connect with that? A normal reaction to an abnormal event. And it's not that divorce is uncommon. Unfortunately, it's extremely common. But it's abnormal to you. It's not what you planned on. You didn't get married to get divorced. That wasn't the plan as you went into this. So as you have this normal reaction to an abnormal event, I just want to put that right up front here because that will help you to feel less crazy. And honestly, a lot of what you're going through right now is crazy making. So connect with that and realize that you get to give yourself a little bit of time. Some people want to put timelines on it. Like, oh, by this time you should be whatever. Don't even listen to them. You're never wrong about how you feel. You're having a normal reaction to an abnormal event. This is how you're supposed to feel when this happens. Okay, now having said that, there are some healthy approaches and there's some less healthy approaches. And let's get clear about what kinds of things you can do to move on and to get to a place where you're feeling like, okay, I've got my life back under control, as if it was ever under control in the first place. But let's look at a concept. So I'm drawing this path where two people are on their way to something. Two happy people wandering along their path here. And then, and to what? Well, out here somewhere is the goal. So maybe that's happiness or a solid, stable, loving marital relationship. Okay? Whatever it is that is your goal out here. I think the short version is joy. Isn't that what we're all after? Happiness, a sense that life is good. That's what our goal is. And we got on this path called marriage thinking, you know what? More likely to hit our goal if we do this together than if we're separate. And that's why you jumped on the path, right? Then life happens. And things beat you up a little bit. So I'm going to symbolize that with a giant. Picture this, a giant shows up right in your way. And this is a big, intimidating, none shall pass kind of a giant. And the giant is telling you don't get to have your goal. Well, the giant could be a financial problem. It could be infidelity. It could be a health problem. It could be a money issue. Whatever it is, here's this huge giant that appears and says, hey, you don't get to have your happily ever after. And he's just this big, bullying, intimidating. What are we going to do? And sometimes the giant doesn't move, doesn't come down. It's this barrier that's just trying to stop you and steal your joy. So here's what I'm thinking. We're going to chart a little pathway around the giant. So just think of this as, okay, we're going to get around this guy one way or the other. What are the two paths that are possible to us? Now, I've been doing marriage and family counseling for my whole career. I happen to know that this is an option. We can take the together path. I'll put that one right up here. Now, this isn't an easy path because whatever the giant is represents some things that a lot of people feel are unresolvable. We're going to address that in another video. But trust me, there are ways to make this work. And as much as people don't believe that when they're heading into a divorce, I have been convinced that there's no giant we can't get around. How are we going to do that? We're going to apply certain principles. Principles determine all of life's outcomes. So what those principles are, that's another conversation, okay? But there are principles that allow us to make that work on the together path. Well, what if we end up on this separate path? And you know what, folks? Sometimes you do, and you didn't even vote for that. Sometimes it was your choice. But one way or another, you could end up on that separate path. One of the things I tell my clients is that the together path requires a unanimous vote, meaning everybody has to vote for that. And even though I'm in favor of that path in most families, I don't get to vote for you. You do, okay? And the together path requires a unanimous vote. If anyone votes separate, whether it's you or your spouse, you'll end up on the separate path because the together path requires the unanimous vote. See where I'm going? Now, what if you end up on that path, whether it's by your own choice or because something happened and this giant occurred and somebody voted separate and now we're on the separate path? Okay, that's where the divorce path goes. How are we still going to get to our happily ever after? How do we get to still claim joy in our life? That's what the core of this video is. How to move on after a divorce. What if you're on the separate path? Because in my mind, you guys, the goal, the joy, the happiness, non-negotiable. I'm going to get behind you all day long to create that joy. What are we going to do if we're on the separate path? Guess what? Principles are going to get us there. And there's a set of principles here too. You know what's really interesting to me? I did child custody evaluations for 13 years in my career. I've worked with a lot of families that are on the separate path, and here's what I've discovered. The principles that allow you to be successful here are the same darn principles that allow you to be successful there. The thing is, when people take the separate route, they usually throw those principles out the window. Let me give you a quick example, and then we can talk some more in the future about this. The example is love. Now think about it. Love would be essential, right? If you're going to be successful on the together path. A lot of times when people go through a divorce because of the pain, because of the injury, because of the issues that are involved, they choose hate instead of love. And I'll tell you what, it makes for a miserable divorce. And that's the way we typically go because traditionally that's what you think has to happen when a divorce occurs. I can tell you from my experience that love is a principle that will make this work so that you can move beyond the divorce. Here's an example of what I mean. Every interaction you have with another person is going to fall on one side or the other. I'm convinced that there is no neutral option like middle of the road. Your interactions will be either a love choice or a hate choice. And I use the word hate because people hate the word hate. But just tune into this. Because what if that's it? Those are your only two choices. If you choose hate, you will make things worse. Guaranteed. If you choose love, you will make things better. Even if the other person isn't choosing love. And often they won't. This is what makes it challenging. You get to choose love no matter what, and especially when other people are choosing hate. I'm not saying this because I want your ex's life to be better, although it might be if you choose love. That's irrelevant. Your life improves when you choose love. Now, really quickly, there's 3 ways to choose hate, 3 steps. There's 3 steps to choose love. So let's get clear about how you're going to choose hate. Can we go there first? Here we go. Step 1, assume the worst. You don't know what people's intentions are, but to do a good hate choice, you gotta assume that they just have evil intention. They want to ruin your life. You know, all of these hateful thoughts. Assume the worst. Step 2, practice pride. Pride is where you know that you're right. And check it out, you do. I've got a good buddy that wrote a book called, you're gonna love this title, You Can Be Right or You Can Be Married. And he's convinced that when we run into problems in a marriage, it's because it's the right fight. That we're fighting about who's right instead of what's right. Brett Williams, awesome little book. with an amazing title. Practice pride. You know that you're right. Hang on to that position, dig in your heels, and do not yield. Step 3, think to destroy. You use that creative mind of yours to come up with ways to hurt and punish and destroy and tear down, okay? You do those 3 things, you got a really great hate choice going on. And just consider for a minute what that's going to do to your life. Huh. Interesting. Okay, let's get on the other side. What if we choose love? It's the 3 opposites, okay? So over here we're assuming the worst. Guess what? In love we assume the best. And we don't know what other people's intentions are, even if they tell us. All we know is what they told us. Assume the best. Step 2, practice humility. Give up your need to be right. Because even though you know you're right, sometimes you're not. And that gets in our way all the time. Knowing that we're right has us treating each other terribly. So practice humility. Step 3, think. Use that creative power of yours. Think to create. To build up and lift and enhance and create an upgrade in your life and in the lives of those around you. Can you move on after a divorce? Absolutely. If we're taking that path, there are principles that will allow that to happen. Number 1 principle, choose love. Wow, that's some tough stuff, but you've got this. I hope that was helpful for you and maybe for somebody else that you know. If you're new here, please subscribe. We'll be back tomorrow with another video.